Hi, I'm Tom Bradford. If you are in the UK but not tax resident here, then you only pay tax on your UK income and you will not have to pay tax on your foreign income. However, if you become a UK resident for tax purposes by spending more than 183 days in the UK in a tax year, then you pay UK tax on all of your income, whether it's from the UK or abroad. So the reason I'm making this video is to show you how you can potentially avoid this through relying on the special rules for UK residents whose permanent home or domicile is abroad. This situation applies to most of my clients. Since they are mostly looking to achieve permanent residence in the UK, they need to spend at least 185 days in the UK in any 12-month period to be eligible for indefinite leave to remain. This point comes at either Year 5 under most visa routes or at Year 3 under the accelerated routes like Exceptional Talent, the Innovator Visa or the Tier 1 Investor Visa. Also, in order to get to the point at which they're entitled to naturalise as British citizens, they need to be in the UK for either 6 years, so 5 plus 1 under the normal visa routes, or for 5 years, 3 plus 2 under the accelerated pathways. The requirement for citizenship is generally less, i.e. 450 days in total over 5 years, which comes to 90 days per year plus 90 days in the last year if they need 6 in total. So you can see all that from the diagram here. Now, how does this interact with the tax position and whether you need to pay UK tax on your foreign income and gains? Essentially, as a UK resident, if you have your permanent home or domicile outside of the UK, then you can choose to be taxed on the remittance basis of taxation. This means that you're not liable to UK tax on your foreign income unless it's brought into the UK, i.e. remitted to the UK. The same applies to your foreign capital gains, for example, if you sell shares or a second home abroad. Also, your non-UK estate is generally speaking outside of the scope of UK inheritance tax, although advice needs to be taken on that separately. Now, what is the test for residence? The first question is whether you are tax resident. So non-residents only pay tax on their UK income. They do not pay UK tax on their foreign income. You're likely to be resident for UK tax purposes if you spend 183 days or more in the UK in the tax year, if you have a home in the UK and you don't have a home overseas, so most of my clients have a home overseas, or if you work full-time in the UK over a period of 365 days. Most of my clients will be tax resident at least in the first 5 to 6 years because they need to spend 185 days in the UK in order to qualify for indefinite leave to remain and then to naturalise as British citizens. So you can see from the diagram here in green that in each year my clients will need to spend 185 days in the UK because they're only allowed 180 days absence in each rolling 12-month period. You can see that 180 days in red here. Now in blue just above it you can see the 183 days, which is the relevant period for the purposes of becoming tax resident. So because they need to be here for 185 days to be on the pathway to permanent residence or indefinite leave to remain, that puts them over the 183 days shown here in blue for tax residency. So they will be tax resident for at least 5 to 6 years as a general rule. Now, if you're domiciled in the UK and you're resident here, you're taxed on the arising basis of taxation, it's called. This means that your worldwide income and gains will be taxable in the UK. And therefore, even if your foreign income and gains have already been taxed in another country, they will still be taxable in the UK, and you must declare all of your foreign income and gains on your tax return. So in some cases, tax relief can be given in the UK for foreign tax paid on foreign income and gains if there's a double taxation agreement, for example. However, this could be a less safe approach depending on the jurisdictions involved. So how do you work out your domicile? The fact that you were born in the UK and you've lived here for most of your life and you're now living here permanently would give a good indication that you might be domiciled in the UK. If any of these elements do not apply, however, then you should look at whether there's an arguable case that you're not domiciled. Your domicile is usually the country your father considered his permanent home when you were born. You need to be able to show that you intended to return home and that you still intend to return home, as it were, but this could be intended after a long period of time in the UK. It's fairly easy for my clients to show that they're not domiciled in the UK, as you can see from the HMRC flowcharts. So if we go to flowchart 1, the first question is, what are your plans for the future? And the answer here is no firm plans, as the case may be. And then, where are you from is the next question. Another country, my clients would say. And then go to chart 3. So if we go to chart 3, the question is, where was your father born? And if in another country, do you have current personal links with that country? Yes. Do you have current personal links with the country or territory of your own birth? Yes. And then it says you're domiciled outside of the UK. So that's quite helpful because that's the situation that would apply to many of my clients. Now, if the position is even stronger in terms of the intention to return, then we go back to flowchart 1. What are your plans for the future to leave the UK? And then you go to flowchart 4. Now, on flowchart 4, where were you born? In another country. Where was your father born? And another country other than while his father was working outside of the UK for a limited period. Then it asks, in which country are most of your personal links? And then if the answer is another country, then you're domiciled outside of the UK. So you can see from this that it's relatively easy to show that your domicile is abroad. And that is the case even if you've been in the UK. Or it can be the case even if you've been in the UK for a considerable period of time. So there's 3 ways to show that you're not domiciled in the UK in broad terms, but each of them contain potential traps for someone who's looking to get permanent residence or citizenship in the UK. Firstly, you can rely on your domicile of origin, then your domicile of choice or your domicile of dependence. Now, the one that's most relevant to us here is domicile of origin. So you normally acquire a domicile of origin from your father when you're born. So your domicile of origin will often be referred as often be the country in which you were born. However, if you were born in a country and your father was not domiciled there at the time you were born, then your domicile of origin may be your father's country of domicile. So there's some complexity there, but essentially, if your father was born outside of the UK, then that can generally be demonstrated. But then there's domicile of choice. Now, this is where there's a potential trap. So you need to manage your affairs to ensure that if it is the case, you do not inadvertently make the UK your domicile of choice. You need to have a legal capacity to acquire a new domicile of choice, but you have that from the age of 16 when you move to another country. So at what point have you chosen the UK as your domicile? Well, neither the acquisition of indefinite leave to remain nor naturalising as a British citizen necessarily mean that you've chosen the UK as your domicile. You can be British and still have your domicile in another country. Domicile is determined by a number of factors, and being British is not determinative. However, the application for ILR and the application for naturalisation need to be navigated carefully if you're intending to remain domiciled. So the application for naturalisation asks you to declare whether you intend to make the UK your main home, and if the UK is not to be your main home, then you should of course make this clear. But speak to me and my tax advisors to make sure that you don't inadvertently fall into any traps when completing these forms, because people do inadvertently at that point make declarations, often unnecessarily, which have the effect of demonstrating later that they chose the UK to be their domicile. So how can you plan your UK residency to avoid paying tax on your foreign income and gains lawfully? Well, broadly, if you want to avoid paying tax on your foreign income and gains after acquiring UK indefinite leave to remain or after naturalising as a British citizen, then you'll have to consider, among other potential approaches, either cease being resident for UK tax purposes, so you're automatically classed as UK non-resident if either you spend fewer than 16 days in the UK or you work abroad full time, so averaging at least 35 hours a week, and if you spent more than 91 days in the UK, of which no more than 30 were spent working. The second approach is to remain tax resident but non-domiciled, and then opt for the remittance basis of taxation. So in order to do this, you'll need to have navigated your applications for indefinite leave to remain and naturalisation in such a way as to avoid having exercised a legal choice to make the UK your domicile. If it's not possible to avoid tax residency, in other words, you are going to be in the UK for more than 183 days, then you can potentially avoid being deemed domicile in the meantime by ensuring that your total time spent in the UK over a 20-year period is not more than 15 years. And in order to continue on this remittance basis of taxation, from years 7 to 12, you need to pay a set charge of 30,000, and then from years 12 to 15, you need to pay 60,000, and then you can continue to benefit from those provisions. So there are also other ways to plan ahead through, for example, corporate tax and trust structures, but these and the approaches I've set out in this video need to be considered carefully with tax advisors and immigration advisors. This is essential, and if you'd like to speak with me and my tax advisors, then I'd be happy to help. Please don't hesitate to get in touch for a free consultation. Thanks very much, and see you in the next video.